The United States government owes $37 trillion, more than any nation has ever owed in the entire recorded history of human civilization. It's a number so large that most people can't even conceptualize it. If you stacked $1 bills, you'd reach the moon and back more than 8 times. And here's the part almost nobody understands. They are not planning to pay this debt back in any meaningful, honest way. They are planning to erase it, not loudly, not publicly, but silently through financial engineering, not through official default that would shatter global trust, not through insane tax hikes or suicidal spending cuts that would collapse the economy. The method is far more strategic, sophisticated, and devastating. They will devalue the currency itself until the debt becomes mathematically irrelevant. Devaluation is the quiet killer that steals wealth without touching balances. Your dollars will still be dollars, but they will be worth dramatically less. The government will never say this directly. They will wrap it in language like stability, reset, or economic reconstruction. And here's where it gets even more alarming. The tool they are preparing to use is something the public believes is separate from government: crypto and gold. You're watching a parallel financial system being constructed behind the scenes. A backup architecture designed for the moment the current system collapses under its own weight. They are accumulating real hard assets while the public sleeps. And when the time is right, they will revalue those assets upward at shock velocity. When gold and Bitcoin are revalued upward, the dollar is simultaneously revalued downward. Every upward tick in gold and Bitcoin is a downward cut into the purchasing power of the dollar. Gold and crypto won't be rising in real terms. They will be exposing collapse. They will be the measuring sticks revealing how weak the dollar has become. It is the same mechanism used in every major debt crisis in history. Governments don't repay impossible debts. They destroy the currency those debts are measured in. Most people think government debt works like household debt. When you owe money, you must work harder, sacrifice more, and spend less. You can't print your own money to fix your mistakes. You can't redefine what your paycheck is worth by declaring new rules. Governments play by a different rule book entirely. They issue the debt and control the unit the debt is denominated in. When the system gets strained, they don't panic. They alter the measurement itself and rewrite the financial physics. That's what a monetary reset is. A controlled demolition of the currency to wipe the slate clean without admitting defeat. The last time the United States used this playbook was 1933. The economy was collapsing, banks were failing, and the government was suffocating under debt. Back then, the dollar was backed by gold at a fixed price of $20.67 per ounce. That peg was considered sacred, permanent, unbreakable. But the debt was unmanageable under those constraints. So Franklin Delano Roosevelt executed one of the boldest financial moves in history. He signed Executive Order 6102, making private ownership of gold illegal. Americans were forced to hand in their gold to the government in exchange for paper dollars. People trusted the government, believing it was temporary and necessary. They surrendered the hardest money known to mankind because they were told it was patriotic. Once the gold was in federal vaults, the government changed the rules. In 1934, they raised the official gold price from $20.67 to $35 per ounce. That was a 69% increase overnight. With a pen stroke, gold became dramatically more valuable relative to dollars. Nothing physical changed about the gold itself. Only the government's declaration changed the dollar-to-gold ratio. Overnight, the value of the government's gold reserves increased by nearly $3 billion. They created wealth from thin air simply by redefining the price. Meanwhile, ordinary Americans holding dollars lost purchasing power. Their savings quietly evaporated through inflation that followed the revaluation. The government's debt fell sharply in real terms. Without paying a single honest dollar, they erased debt by weakening the currency. That move was sold as necessary economic recovery. In reality, it was a historic transfer of wealth from citizens to the state. That is the blueprint. Corner the asset, revalue it upward, devalue the currency, escape the debt. Now fast forward to the present. The scale is bigger, the tools are digital, and the numbers are astronomically larger. The United States is facing a $37 trillion crisis that cannot be solved conventionally. Taxation won't work, growth won't work, austerity would trigger riots and collapse. There is only one realistic option left: destruction of the currency. The quiet reset that turns trillions of real obligations into cheap monopoly paper. But unlike 1933, they don't have to seize gold from citizens. They just need to accumulate enough strategically and then revalue it from the top down. And now they have Bitcoin, the perfect programmable asset that can be repriced by policy, narrative, or national declaration. They are preparing to use both gold and Bitcoin as the detonators, two levers capable of rewriting financial history in one coordinated move. And the moment they pull that lever, everything denominated in dollars collapses. Savings accounts, bonds, pensions, and retirement plans vaporize in real purchasing power. The public will call it inflation. The government will call it stabilization. The truth is, it will be wealth transfer on a scale humanity has never seen. The greatest financial event in American history is already in motion, and almost nobody sees it. Because the collapse never announces itself with explosions, it whispers first. The signs are already everywhere, hiding in plain sight, and the next moves are predictable if you understand the pattern that never changes. So let AS follow the trail of evidence and see how the reset machinery is being constructed right now. Because none of this is theoretical, policy moves are already happening in plain sight. On January 23, 2025, the President signed an executive order establishing a strategic Bitcoin reserve. The order directs the US Treasury to acquire and hold Bitcoin as a national strategic asset, similar to the Petroleum Reserve. The public explanation sounded harmless and patriotic. Protect American innovation, stay ahead of China, ensure leadership in digital finance. But read between the lines and you'll see something much more serious. The Strategic Reserve gives the government legal authority to stockpile Bitcoin quietly and aggressively. The United States already holds approximately 210,000 Bitcoin seized from criminal operations. Silk Road, Bitfinex, ransomware cases, Bitcoin captured through forfeitures and investigations. At current market prices, around $100,000 per coin. That stash is worth about $21 billion. A decent number, but nowhere near enough to change the face of a $37 trillion debt problem. The executive order is designed to increase that reserve dramatically, not by buying Bitcoin on open markets, which would inflate prices instantly and telegraph the plan. Instead, the order enables accumulation through indirect methods: seizures, fines, settlement payments, custodial transfers, and potentially even state-operated mining infrastructure. The proposed target in congressional discussion is staggering: 1 million Bitcoin accumulated over the next 5 years. At today's prices, that would cost $100 billion if purchased outright, but that is not how they plan to acquire it. They're aiming to collect it quietly at low average cost, then flip the valuation switch when the reserve is full and the world cannot stop it. Because once the government declares a strategic valuation, the market is forced to follow. Reserve assets become price anchors. They dictate global pricing norms overnight. Imagine this scenario because it's the blueprint. The US accumulates 1 million Bitcoin quietly, while the public ignores or doubts the trend. Then one morning an announcement is made. For national balance sheet purposes, Bitcoin will be valued at $1,000 per coin. Not based on the current market price, based on a declared strategic valuation, just like gold was repriced in 1934. Overnight, the government's holdings jumped from $100 billion to $1 trillion in value. A $900 billion gain created not by mining, work, or productivity, but by pen stroke. And once that declaration hits, the market has no choice but to move toward the new valuation. Liquidity, speculation, and global reserve logic push Bitcoin toward the declared price. People call it manipulation. Governments call it stability, leadership, and necessary reform. The same mechanism is being prepared for gold. But gold's revaluation target is even more shocking and even more impactful. The United States officially holds 8,133 tons of gold. That's approximately 261 million troy ounces, the largest reserve in the world. At today's market price of around $12,800 per ounce, that gold is worth about $731 billion. But here is the key most Americans and investors do not realize on the government's balance sheet that gold is not valued at $2,800 per ounce. Legally, it's recorded at 42 by 22 per ounce, a price set in 1973 and never updated. That means on the books, America's gold reserve is valued at $11 billion. It's an asset artificially restrained for one purpose: future revaluation. Now imagine what happens when that price is officially rewritten. Imagine the government announces a new strategic valuation of $20,000 per ounce. At $20,000, the US gold reserve becomes worth $5.2 trillion overnight. That's a financial nuclear bomb in accounting terms. Combine that with a $1 trillion Bitcoin reserve, and the government suddenly manufactures $6.2 trillion in balance sheet strength out of thin air. Not through economic growth, not through productivity, not through paying debt, through revaluation, through redefining the measuring stick itself. This instantly lowers the debt to GDP ratio. It makes the US appear financially stable without actually solving anything. Markets rejoice, politicians declare victory, the public celebrates what they think is a miracle recovery. But here's what the average citizen doesn't understand. When gold jumps from $2,800 to $20,000, the dollar loses 85% of its value. Relative to gold, when Bitcoin jumps from $100,000 to $1,000, the dollar loses 90% of its value relative to Bitcoin. And when the dollar loses that much relative to hard assets, it loses 50 to 70% of its value relative to everything else. Groceries double. Energy prices triple. Housing appears to go through the roof, not because houses are more valuable, but because your money is weaker. Your savings account doesn't grow. It shrinks in power. The number may remain the same, but the meaning collapses. A $100,000 savings account becomes worth $35,000 in real purchasing power, and years of work evaporate in a matter of months. That's the real objective. Destroy the currency, to destroy the debt while pretending nothing happened. The wealthy survive because they hold assets. The poor survive because they own nothing and owe nothing. The middle class gets annihilated. The savers, the responsible, the careful, they become the sacrifice. You'll hear language like financial stabilization, national resilience, reset, or modernization. But the reality will be the largest legal theft of wealth in American history. Not by criminals in dark basements, but by suits in government buildings. Not through chaos, but through policy announcements delivered calmly on television. Every central bank in the world sees this coming. That's why central banks bought more gold in 2022 and 2023 than any year since 1950. China is stockpiling gold and quietly accumulating Bitcoin. Russia has cut dollar reserves and fortified gold reserves aggressively. The BRICS nations are openly discussing a new currency backed by gold. They're preparing for a world where US dollar dominance ends violently. They know what is coming. They are preparing for impact. The only group not preparing is the ordinary public. The people who believe the system works for them instead of against them. And when the revaluation trigger is pulled, there will be no warning, no second chance, no reversal, no recovery period. You will either be positioned before the reset or you will be destroyed during it. So what do you do now, knowing what's coming? How do you survive a monetary reset designed to erase trillions in debt by erasing the value of your dollars? The first step is understanding the timeline, because timing is everything. This reset is not decades away. It is unfolding right now in real time. Think of the next few years as 3 distinct phases: a setup phase, a crisis phase, and an execution phase. The setup phase is already underway in 2025. This is the accumulation period, where governments quietly gather Bitcoin and strengthen gold reserves. This is the period where narratives begin shifting softly but noticeably. Words like digital reserve, strategic asset, and sound money start appearing in official language. This is when the public is still calm, invested, and trusting. This is when ordinary people still believe inflation is temporary and normal. The second phase begins when a visible crisis emerges. Maybe a debt ceiling standoff, maybe bond market instability, maybe another wave of bank failures. There will be headlines about defaults, downgrades, and emergency meetings. There will be dramatic speeches about saving the nation from financial collapse. This crisis will not be accidental. It will be the political justification for extraordinary new measures. Every reset in history begins with engineered panic. In chaos, people accept what they would normally reject. The third phase is the moment of execution. The announcement that appears suddenly, framed as heroic salvation. We are stabilizing the dollar by backing it with real assets. We are restoring fiscal strength with strategic revaluation. Bitcoin gets valued at $1 million per coin for reserve purposes. Gold gets revalued at $20,000 per ounce on the government balance sheet. The markets explode upward overnight. Politicians cheer. News anchors celebrate recovery. But beneath the celebration lies devastation. The dollar collapses in real purchasing power, and the middle class collapses with it. Your savings lose half their value in a single year. Your wages lag behind inflation by months or years. Pension funds vaporize because they are stuffed with long-term bonds. Bond markets implode because nobody wants to be repaid in toilet paper. Many homeowners think rising home prices will save them. But a house worth $800,000 is not wealth if the currency is worth pennies. Your mortgage payment stays the same, but food becomes unaffordable. Your equity looks huge on paper but worthless in reality. The wealthy survive and expand their power because they are already positioned. They own real assets, real property, real commodities, things inflation cannot destroy. The poor survive because they have nothing to lose and debts that get inflated away. The middle class gets wiped out because all their value is stored in fiat instruments. This is the same dynamic repeated in Weimar Germany, in 1980s Argentina, in Zimbabwe, Venezuela, and countless others. The pattern never changes. The middle collapses, the top consolidates, the bottom suffers but survives. And that is why you must position yourself now, not after the announcement. Once the reset begins, it's already too late. You cannot buy gold when the price explodes 500% overnight. You cannot buy Bitcoin when it gaps from $100,000 to $500,000 in a week. There will be headlines that say we're experiencing temporary price adjustments, which is code for we just stole your purchasing power. Banks will freeze withdrawals for system security. Markets will halt trading to protect investors. You will wake up one morning and realize the window has closed forever. And the decisions you made before that day will determine everything. So here is what the smart money is doing right now. Not tomorrow, not after permission, right now. They are moving out of dollar-denominated instruments because bonds, savings, and fixed income assets are death traps in a devaluation cycle. They are transferring wealth into hard assets because hard assets do not care what currency they are priced in. They are buying physical gold, not ETF promises, because metal you do not control is not yours when the system cracks. They are allocating to Bitcoin with patience and discipline, because Bitcoin is the only asset governments cannot inflate or seize through a printing press. They are securing real estate with real utility, land, farmland, rental property, not speculative luxury towers that collapse when credit disappears. They are learning skills that produce value in any economy. Because in crisis, productivity outperforms bank balances. They are diversifying internationally across multiple currencies. Because having wealth trapped in one jurisdiction is financial suicide. They are building networks and alliances, not just portfolios. Because economic resets are social resets too. And most importantly, they are preparing psychologically. Because when panic begins, only calm minds win. This is not doom. This is preparation for one of the greatest wealth transfers in human history. Every collapse is also a rebirth. Every reset is also an opportunity for those positioned correctly. Those who panic, lose. Those who prepare, rise. When the dollar implodes, when the banking system freezes, when inflation breaks the social fabric, there will be two kinds of people. Those who say, nobody warned us, and those who say, I positioned early. Which side you stand on is being decided right now. In this quiet, invisible period when everything looks deceptively normal. Because the most dangerous moment in history is not when buildings burn. It's when the crowd feels safe while the storm forms just beyond the visible horizon. This is not financial advice. This is a wake-up call, written in numbers that cannot be debated. $37 trillion in debt, 132% debt to GDP, $1.2 trillion annual interest payments, projected to hit $1.8 trillion by 2027. No nation has ever survived those conditions without currency destruction. And America will not be the first. The window is closing, the clock is ticking, and soon the world will divide into before and after. Into those who saw it coming and those who never saw the punch until it landed. If you understand what is coming, share this message, because silence is complicity and ignorance is fatal. If you want more breakdowns and real-time tracking of the reset as it unfolds, subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay ahead while others fall asleep. The greatest transformation of wealth in modern history is already underway. The only question left is whether you will be a victim or a survivor. Prepare, position, protect. Everything from this point forward depends on the choices you make now.